Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
I have a question for Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. On a job, I've been subjugated to white harassment, which involved me and another white woman. I go by a code of conduct when it comes to dealing with white folks, and I minimize my contact with them. I don't speak to them, and the company that I work for does service for the hotel that she just so happened to work for. And when she tried to speak to me, I would ignore her, and I wouldn't talk to her or anything, and I would just grab the papers and go on with my day. And I've noticed that, there are consequences when it comes to ignoring white women on the job. And I got news from the VP of the hotel that they had contacted my manager saying that I was harassing her because I was ignoring her. I wasn't following proper job procedures or anything like that. And what I've noticed is that when I was outside of my booth, she tried to come speak to me again. And I just kept ignoring her. I wasn't talking to her or anything like that. And her boyfriend said, "Hey, black effer," like, "Hey, black mother effer," like, I think that was his way of trying to get my attention. So I laughed, and I continued on ignoring him, and also her. And I noticed how he went on the inside of the hotel and tried to pick a fight with my black coworker, who was just so happened to be African at the front desk. So they called security on him. And she got frustrated, and she told me, "Well, you should be happy a woman of my status is trying to speak to you anyway." I have a question. Is there anything that I did wrong? Is there another way I should have handled the situation? Do you have any input on it?
I would just suggest, and correct me if I didn't hear you totally. Do you see, I think that start out in terms of attempting to be courteous and respectful at all times, to the extent that
it's hard, though. It's very hard,
See, sometimes white females want to insist that a black male give them attention. And and I'm not saying give the female any attention beyond being professional and polite. Do you see what I'm saying? And you may have to give, sit down with your manager and say, the person is being demanding, or that I relate to them. Are there guidelines that you would like to give me about how I can conduct myself in a professional way? Do you see, I don't date people on the job if that is what the issue is. But sometimes they can be very provoking. I had a situation where a young black man in Boston. He was working in Senator Kennedy's office, and a white female would constantly come by his desk and touch him. And he said, Dr. Welsing, how should I handle it? And I said, you can say that, really this is sexual harassment. And her response was, who are you going to tell? Who will they believe, you or me? Do you see what I'm saying? So that whole thing of whether she's trying to get her white boyfriend to have a response that I will protect you from this black monster, you see, but I would start out saying in the workplace, try to have conduct that is professional in relationship to other co-workers. In other words, you may have an idea about what racism, white supremacy is, but in terms of your performing in your work setting, so then I'm going to be rude and disrespectful. I would say don't use that approach. If you can, be polite and courteous, but that doesn't mean, laughing and grinning and, well, don't you date? The number of black males have said, white females have said to them, oh, you're not interested in white females? Or don't you date white females? Do you see where the person is honest and they might answer, no, I do not. Thank you very much. No, I do not. Do you see? But if somebody is attempting to be provocative, you may have to resort to speaking to a supervisor. Please tell me how I can handle this situation. You see, I am being polite and courteous and doing my job in relationship to this person, but I would prefer to not have all of this extra attention. Does that make any sense to you?
That makes perfect sense. I also want to add is that I completely appreciate all the things that you've done throughout the years, and I consider you Neely Fuller's, Mr. Neely Fuller's partner in justice. And I just appreciate everything that you've done.
Context of white supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, September 1, 2016. So I have been told. This is our weekly forum, Workplace Racism. Feel free, dial in. This is an exchange of views. If you have had some triumphs on the job, meaning you have figured out some things to do, things to say, things not to do, things not to say, that minimize problem, neutralize racist activity on the job, definitely chime in, share your experience. If you've had difficulties or problems, certainly chime in. We can offer suggestions, thoughts on what's happening, and something hopefully that might help alleviate the situation. And if you have observations, if you are just witnessing things that are happening on the job that are of note, that relate directly, indirectly to the system of racism, white supremacy, certainly dial in and share that as well. Always encourage, be looking at your policy and procedure that pops up so frequently with regards to workplace racism. If you, and I have encouraged, take time, and you should do it like before there is a problem. Mr. Edward Williams, who wrote the book that deals with racism on the job, How to Support and Defend the United States Constitution for Victims of Racism. He's been a guest on this program repeatedly, even called in for our workplace racism segment just in the past few weeks. But he always says that his book is not for victims of racism to wait and read once the poo has hit the fan. You should read the book in advance so that you can minimize those problems happening to begin with. Same thing with policy and procedure. I would read it immediately as soon as you start on your job. If you've been there a while and you haven't read it, or you forgot it, maybe you've been working there a few years and you went through it when you originally started, had your training and everything. Go back through it. And I know sometimes those policies and procedures, regulations, and what have you, your manual for your job, it can be kind of thick sometimes. You can break it up. You don't have to read the whole thing in one day. I've said you can just take 10, 15 minutes each evening. 10, 15 minutes. You sit down, you read a little bit, read your section, you stop. You can break this up over, a week, 2 weeks time period, go through the whole thing. You can highlight, make notes of things that are pertinent to you. And I suspect there might be some things that you notice, hey, this is not being enforced. I see this rule being violated on a regular basis. That's the sort of thing you can make note of. It might be of use to you in the immediate future, and it might be of some use way down the road, and seeing that it seems like policy and procedure is not being enforced in a uniform manner. And you can just have your dates and times where you've seen this is, rule regulation number 13.3-A is not being enforced. And I have the dates and times where this was not done, this was not done, this was not done. And now people are coming to make an issue of this with me. Why is it that this policy is not being enforced equally across the board, getting to the Constitution? But just that's something I think is very, very important. You might also even see things in there that don't make sense, because I know that was the experience for me even when I was super ignorant about racism and everything else, just flipping through policy and procedure. Some of it did not make sense, and I would go ask other people and they would say the same thing. Sometimes it could just be that it's whoever wrote the policy and procedure did a poor job of writing it out, and sometimes they absolutely do have rules that don't make sense, and sometimes that is done purposely so it can be confusing. So again, they have discretion about how they want to enforce the rules, and the rules can be left up to ambiguous interpretation, which generally is not going to work out well in your favor. With that, the number to dial, 641-715-3640. The code is 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code is 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. We are still waiting on TuneIn to do their job and update the feed at their station. I did make the submission for iTunes. Our archives are already at iTunes. We can go there and download them. This upload would make the live stream available at iTunes as well, so you could listen to our live content on iTunes also. So hopefully we can make that happen, and I'll update folks as that progresses. But in the meantime, we are available at blacktalkradionetwork.com. The address is linked on our Facebook page, on our Twitter feed. You can just go right to the Cows page at Black Talk Radio Network, and its autoplay is on, so you will start hearing the live content as soon as you go to our page. If you have any problems, confusion, difficulties, feel free to drop us an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. Always grand to hear Dr. Welsing's voice at the beginning. That was from her last visit to the Cows, her 31st visit to the Cows, where she addressed the problem I think we spent a good bit of time on last week. I think she had some logical input there as well. Quick things I'll get to, and then we'll get to the folks who dialed in, who had things they would like to share. This is a report right at the end of last week down in Florida from the Daytona Times. Huger sues city, alleges discrimination. I think they mean racism, white supremacy. When Thomas Huger applied for a job as the city of Daytona Beach's deputy public works director last year, he was armed with a Master of Business Administration graduate degree, numerous certifications, and excellent performance evaluations and reviews. The current facilities, construction, and maintenance manager, who has a 10-year work history with the city, was turned down for the job. At the time, Huger, a former U.S. Marine, was 63. The position went to David Waller, a 39-year-old white male, a lawsuit states, was less qualified, had less work experience than Huger, and has less education. Waller has a bachelor's degree and worked for the city of Avito as an operations manager before being hired by the city of Daytona Beach. After he was turned down for the job last year, Huger filed a claim against the city with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, citing racial and age bias. This month, Huger filed a lawsuit against the city in Volusia County Circuit Court. According to the lawsuit, the city has actual and constructive knowledge of discrimination within its ranks and workforce that it has permitted to ensue and has engaged in a pattern of discrimination, I would say white supremacy, with its hiring and practices. The lawsuit further states the city has retaliated against Huger by isolating him, giving him a poor evaluation, subjecting him to ridicule publicly, humiliating him, harassing him, undermining his supervisory authority rightfully entitled to him by his job title and position, and attempting to create a work overload for performance evaluation. He is demanding a jury trial. They go on to have lots of statistics that show major discrepancies in the amount of compensation, salary that the non-white workers make for the city of Daytona in comparison to the salaries of white employers. And they show a major discrepancy in the lack of non-white employees that they have relative to the population of non-white people in the city of Daytona. I'm skipping down a little bit because he has a white woman who's speaking up for him. I had a little audio segment at the beginning with Mr. Fuller talking about workplace racism and how you cannot accuse any white individual of being racist. You need a white person to back that, to say, yes, I think such and such is a racist. But he has a white person who is saying, yes, I also think that they are practicing racism in this work environment. He has a white woman in this case who is speaking up and saying that they are also practicing racism, white supremacy in this workplace. So this white woman, let's see, her name is Wiles. Last name is Wiles. I'm just trying to see if they had her first name here. Sonia Wiles. Sonia Wiles is a white woman. So it says Sonia Wiles has also alleged that a white male supervisor and panel member had made racist comments. In stating that racism was a reason Huger didn't get the job, Huger's lawsuit cited the panel member had stated that he was involved in the Ku Klux Klan when he was a young man, that he was scared of all the blacks around Bethune-Cookman College, HBCU, that he would never bring his family to live in the city of Daytona Beach, and that he had been overheard using the word nigger. The lawsuit includes that Wiles was fired after she objected that there were racist motivations for failing to promote Huger. I will stop there. You can check this out online, but there are tons of these types of reports on a daily basis worldwide, this sort of thing happening on the job all the time, why you should never be surprised, why you should be documenting, familiar with your policy and procedure, observant, so that you can be prepared, not stunned, not surprised, not caught off guard if this sort of thing should happen on your job. We had folks who wrote in this week as well. Again, if you want to write in during the program, if you're unable to participate live via the phone, feel free to drop an email and we can read your commentary on the air anonymously if you like, and then people can, give their thoughts, observations, what have you. So first person wrote in. I've been listening to the program for a few months now, and it has been a tremendous help to my understanding of racism, white supremacy. I had a question regarding the last episode of Workplace Racism. It was mentioned that it would be a good idea to record conversations with suspected racists if a victim feels they might be in danger. To my knowledge, recording a conversation without the consent of the person being recorded is illegal. So would this recording ever be presented as any evidence of mistreatment, or is it just used in order to collect accurate information that can be written down? Great question. I think Mr. Scotty Reed, founder of the Black Talk Radio Network, I think he's spoken to this before. Certainly, depending on your state, I know it varies state by state, you have to have consent of the individuals that are present to record a conversation. I would recommend, if you want to take notes just so that you can have things accurate, if you want to record and it's just for you, this is not going to be something that's shared with anybody or anything like that. You're not going to post this content on YouTube or anything. Just if you want to have an accurate record, you can ask. I have given that suggestion out before. If you're having a meeting with someone, particularly if there has been a problem with things are said in meetings, if you're having a conversation with a coworker, manager, supervisor, whatever it is, and there tends to be a problem of things not being remembered, or there is some sort of dispute about exactly what was said, you can just make a request that we have this recorded, and everybody will get a copy, and that will eliminate all confusion. We will have a accurate, pristine record of our conversation as a reference. You can ask if it's something where people are making statements and that sort of thing. I say, hey, if you feel that it would be in your best interest just so that you can have a record for yourself that this did happen, I would say record. I also know that I have seen enough cases over the years where there has been an allegation of racism, white supremacy being practiced in the workplace, and someone did come out with a recording. In fact, even beyond racism, just any form of mistreatment where a person said that they were being mistreated on the job, and they ended up just recording the conversation, and that did end up becoming important, and that did end up helping their case, even though they did not notify anyone else present that they were recording. So I would certainly say use your best judgment. If you think it would be best to ask, and hey, that's always, I don't think there's anything incorrect about asking. If you can go ahead and record, if it's a meeting or something taking place and you want to have a record, great. But if you are being subjected to abuse, verbal abuse, if they're saying things, that sort of thing, and you want to make sure that you have a record of this happening, I can and have seen where that has been helpful, even if the person did not have consent of everyone present to record, document that was indeed taking place. So I definitely think that's important. Great question, something to think about, but I still would suggest it can be very, very helpful to have some sort of documentation, recorded documentation of things that are happening, particularly if you're being verbally mistreated on the job. Next thing, a person wrote in. I'm writing to see if you can help me. What would you write in a resignation letter at a place where you are leaving workplace? Would you include specifics or just be as private as possible about your whereabouts? This is the workplace where Dr. Rasayan told me it's full of macroaggressions, and the retired firefighter said it was a highly toxic environment. I'm unsure if I should say I'm leaving to pursue further studies, etc. And honestly, I'm leaving to attend residency this fall, but I don't know if I should reveal all that. Besides, this workplace never promoted me past administrative assistant type work, even with my doctorate degree. I had to teach at an evening college to supplement my income. My general policy, regardless, even if I have been treated wonderfully in a workplace, is I do not unnecessarily divulge information. These are not, my brothers and sisters. It's not my family at work. I don't think that they need to know every tidbit and detail about what your future plans are. So I would try to keep it as generic as possible. In the resignation letter, if you're pursuing, if you have further academic pursuits, you can leave it at that. Or however you want to phrase it. I'm going to be continuing my education, and my coursework is going to consume a great deal of my time and energy. Therefore, I'm, moving on, whatever. But I would not give them, an itemized detail of a lot of information. And I've had other people ask about this as well. I would be prepared, particularly if this is a situation where you are resigning, you're not like quitting and, leaving a trail of dust as you storm out of the door. If you're leaving and you're doing the 2-week notice thing, so you're going to be hanging out there for a period of time before you actually exit, I would already have in mind when people come around and they start trying to pilfer you for information. Where are you going? What's your job going to be? Are you moving? Are you staying in town? With all those questions, I would already have that in mind. I would try to go through the types of questions. If you've been around these people and you know how, what kind of snoops you work with, you've heard other people leave, so you know the types of questions that they tend to ask and the type of business that they want to know. Have that in mind and kind of already go through how you're going to respond to those questions, what information you're going to reveal, what you are not going to reveal. If you know this is the type of environment where they tend to do a lot of goofiness, like if somebody leaves and it's, oh, we got to have a party now, it's shingding time, and we want to get together and all that, already have in mind how you want to deal with all that. If I have no interest in doing a party, I would make that clear. If this is an environment where they do that sort of thing, I don't want any parties or anything like that. It's been a wonderful work experience, learning experience. I'm glad to have the opportunity to have met all of you all, and hopefully we will have further contact in the future. But, let's just stay professional and get things done. I'm here to work my last, however long I'm going to be here. So let's get back to the grindstone. We got more to do, and just keep it going in that manner. But I would already have all of that in mind for the last few days that you're going to be on that job, so that you can better handle everything that's going to pop up in your last days being there. And I would keep in mind, as I've stated consistently, part of that Voltron effect, racists, they do talk on the job. So even as you're leaving, I would keep that in mind, because I have seen where people try to sabotage you as you move forward in your career, finding where you're going to go next, and talking to the people that work there, talking to other potential future employers, I would make every effort to just keep that in mind, so you're not giving them any ammunition. Just keep things businesslike, keep things cordial, courteous, do your work the last, however long you're going to be there, and then, boop, out the door. That would be my recommendation. With that, we'll get to the folks who dialed in. If you have commentary, observations on the tidbits that you heard from some of the other listeners, that is always fine. If you have your own incidents that you would like to touch on, feel free. The folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Feel free to chime in. Oh, and I will make sure to say again, this is not a spectator broadcast. This is not for people to just dial in and hang out on the line like, oh, this is so entertaining. This is great. I love hearing Gus and all of his callers. That is not what this is designed for at all. I am certain if you are a victim of racism, particularly if you are a black person, you have got some workplace racism incidents to discuss, whether it's neutralizing problems with other black coworkers, things that you're seeing in terms of what whites are doing on the job. I am sure it is always beneficial just for people to get a better grasp of the type of things that you might have to deal with on the job, to already be thinking of strategies. That in and of itself is hugely constructive for other non-white people, particularly non-white people who don't have an extensive work history, younger folks who have not had all of these experiences, just to hear about the type of things that they might run into on the job, so you can already be thinking, if it does happen, your brain computer will be operating at a phenomenally more efficient rate. Like, I remember they were talking about this situation. Bang, I'd already thought about a strategy about how I was going to deal with this. Boop, or even better, you are already doing things as soon as you get on the job to minimize some of these things from happening. So it is extremely constructive and appreciated to have folks participate. Let us not be spectators. That is not what counter racism is about. Folks that dialed in with a hand up, your line should be open. Feel free to chime in.
Yes, may I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, yes, and to the rest of the callers. So I've noticed throughout my first week of school that people have been talking about Harambe a lot, and I've also been looking through social media this summer and just the jokes about Harambe, and it's just been a little bit chaotic just based on that. And I've seen a whole bunch of posts about it, and I specifically remember one post that stated, "Heroes will always be remembered, but legends never die," and it was cut out to be Harambe's face. And I just got confused because I didn't see how he was a hero, because all he did was just drag a child down a moat or body of water or whatever. But I just got confused, and I just found that interesting how this summer and this first week of school the whole topic has been about Harambe, and yeah, that's all I had to share. Thank you for taking my call.
For sure. Our caller in the Bay Area, I'm not surprised that folks remember from this summer. That was, I think, one of the biggest incidents of the summer of 2016, the gorilla that was shot and killed at the zoo. I believe it was in Cincinnati, where a black child fell in the moat, and the gorilla grabbed the child and pulled him a little bit, and then they ended up shooting and killing the gorilla, and people were outraged, and they were talking about charging the parents with neglect. I think the prosecutor, or I remember, it's not I think, the prosecutor, when he announced that they were not going to charge the parents with anything, said it's not like they were in the bathroom smoking crack when all of this happened. But yeah, they even, this happened a while ago. Like, I think this happened, it's been a couple months now. This was like at the very beginning of the summer. But I'm not surprised, because just last week they had reports that I think the zoo had to take down the page they had some social media pages in remembrance, memorial to Harambe, and they had to take them down because people were still making memes about this. And of course, there was a lot of racism in it, comparing this gorilla to black people and all of that. So I'm not surprised that your classmates are getting in on this too. And your classmates are on the other side of the country, all the way in California, and they're still chatting about this, which just in my view, anything is worth more than the life of a black person, in this case, a black child. Even some monkey is worth more than the life of a black child. And I think also this is kind of dual layers. It also gives, in my view, has given whites a lot of opportunities to practice racism with their jokes and comparing black people to apes and gorillas, which is long-running white supremacy culture. I don't just, in terms of record, I would just make note of it if there's an opportunity to ask questions, right? Because you were saying, some people were saying that he's a hero. If you want to ask, what do you mean when you say hero? What's your definition of a hero? What exactly qualifies Harambe as a hero, quote unquote? If you want to think of some questions to ask any of your white, classmates, if you are so inclined, even if you want to even do that, it might not even be worth it. It might just be something that you just take note of as interesting observations as I'm beginning my school year.
Okay, I'll do that.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus, to all the callers. Gus, you're always asking for examples of people who are entrepreneurs, and whether or not them being in business for themselves shields them from workplace racism. So, by the way, this is the female caller in New York. I recently relocated to South Carolina to be with my mother, who is getting older, and she's in those years. So she needs me. So I'm here, and I'm glad to be able to do that for her. So I was securing a property, and I decided that when I was making this move, that everybody that I dealt with were going to be victims. I'm going to find victims who had their own businesses, and I was going to support them more than, or preferably, if I could, not deal with white people at all, not give white people my money at all in certain instances. So I found a wonderful black woman who has her own real estate company, and in the area, she's very, very popular. She's known to be the best in the area. So I was very graced to have the pleasure to deal with her, so part of the thing that happens with securing properties is you have to go through inspections of the property. So she has, of course, a set of vendors that she has relationships with. So when the home inspector showed up, that was a young black man. I was very happy about that. When the HVAC inspector showed up, that was a young black man. These black men with their own companies. I was very happy about that. So then the termite inspector showed up, racist suspect. So the whole point of this anecdote is just to highlight how we should never, ever, ever let racists know that we're working with, let them know about our personal business. So apparently she's been working with this racist suspect for a long time when it comes to doing termite inspections. And he rattles off to her, oh, yeah, so how's John? And John is apparently her boyfriend. And she goes, oh, he's okay, he's fine. Yeah, what's he doing lately? So from the gist of the conversation and from what she has spoken to me about on other occasions, John kind of helps her with her business. So he was like, oh, what's he doing lately? And she said, oh, he's doing well, or he says to her, what, are you teaching him the ropes or something? And, she was very visibly embarrassed about this whole conversation, this exchange that she was having with this racist suspect. And then he says, don't tell me he's a kept man. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I said, in my opinion, she was being psychologically, sexually sewered, because I felt that vibe coming off of him, especially he's in the presence of two black females, and one of them is basically hiring him for a service. But, that didn't stop him from abusing her. I mean, that's a perfect opportunity to abuse her. These are two black women. One of them is purchasing a property. One of them owns their own business. And here he comes, So, I mean, like I said, that was a perfect example. I thought about the show, and I wanted to share that. That was a perfect example of somebody who is in business for themselves, who is experiencing workplace racism on the job, even though she is the one that is making money for him. Okay, so I just wanted to share that, and I'll mute my line.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry for her and you that you all had to experience that, but that is just further evidence. I just don't think that if you go into business for yourself, whatever that means, that is not going to sever your ties with racist man, racist woman, racist child. And I mean, it's going to pop up in a variety of ways, depending on the type of, business that you operate. You're still directly, indirectly, probably a lot directly, more so than a lot of us concede. It's been my experience, directly have to deal with racists still, and that sort of capacity. And just to echo, double down on the point of you really don't want to be engaging in, personal conversation and having them in your business about your relationship or your family or you just don't want to give them that opportunity, because it seems like what you were saying, it just gets to tacky so quick, and some sort of degrading and just mocking her and her relationship with this black male. I mean, just that sort of trashiness is so common in the workplace, and you really just want to try to minimize that as much as possible. As I stated at the very beginning, we're not friends. These are not my homies. You're here to do a job. If in this situation I am paying you to do a service, let's just keep it business. And you don't have to be nasty, you don't have to be rude, but we don't need to be having a whole lot of personal conversation. I'm not asking you about your children. I don't care about your wife or your husband or your grandparents or none of that. And you certainly are not going to be conversing about any of my relatives or anything like that. Do whatever job you hear. Termites. That's what you hear. Termites. Termites. Right on. And get this done expeditiously so you can get on your way and we don't have to have any more direct contact. But absolutely, that's the sort of thing that you're still going to have to navigate in a system of racism, white supremacy, even as a black entrepreneur, unless I have been misinformed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings to you, Gus, and to all the callers and the listeners. I just wanted to chime in regards to the conversation that you just had with the black female. And I think there was a person who wrote in who was transitioning from their job, and they were asking about giving out information about what they were going to do. And I just emphatically agree with you. You want to give white people as little detail as possible, even if you have to lie to them. Just lie to them so they don't know your business in any way, shape, or form, and keep it moving. One thing I've noticed just in the behavior that black people display on the job versus white people when they're transitioning from jobs is white people have the liberty because of their racism, white supremacist, white power. They are always at liberty to tell all their business, where they're going. I've seen them just give the full gamut as to what their next, steps are going to be when they're leaving. And I find that a lot of black people tend to think the same way that white people do, that they can do the same thing, until white people show them what being black is supposed to be like in the system of white supremacy. And I think that just comes from us being acculturated into thinking that we're American or we're, a part of this this, whatever you want to call it, that these white people have created this plantation system. And I think that when we get comfortable like that, it's very easy for us to, on a psychological level, it gets easy for you to feel like you can talk about your business and things like that. And what they do, like I said, they psychoanalyze us all the time. They're taking notes on what we're doing and how we do it all the time. And that's all being done to preemptively put a stop to whatever you're trying to do, or to in some way make it troublesome, or even just destroy whatever prospects that you might have. So I would just say I agree with Gus wholeheartedly. You don't want to tell them anything about what you're doing whatsoever, if possible. And I think, like I said, just give them what they need to hear and keep it moving, keep it business. And like the black female just talked about, this woman has her own business. She's working with this white male. He's contributing, she's contributing to him being able to make money based on her utilizing his services. And he still comes in like a plantation slave master and basically steps all over her relationship and tries to emasculate this woman's male counterpart right then and there in front of her client, which was obviously the black female who was just talking. So to me, that's a great sign of showing you that white people on all levels function with the plantation mentality, and they are always the plantation master. So none of us should ever get comfortable with being around white people and displaying anything about ourselves, whether it's personal information, whatever the case may be. Give them just what they need to get whatever you need done, and that's it. And give as little as possible unless it's necessary in order for you to get from point A to point B when dealing with them. Thank you, and I'll mute my line.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, feel free, chime in. I was curious for people, the female caller in New York who shared about that incident, and or anyone else, if you're in that type of situation and you can see that that's where the conversation is going, they're making those sort of just really tacky remarks, how would you neutralize that situation if, that's happening to you or you're present and someone's doing that? Suggestions. Folks had an idea of what to say, what they would do to try to stop, to compensatory conversation control, we might call it, where you're able to use words to redirect what we're talking about, where the conversation is going. If folks have any suggestions on that, that might be helpful as well, because I suspect that type of thing happens to a lot of black people in the workplace setting. But that's one folks can chime in on as we proceed through the dialogue. Other folks have comments they wanted to address, either your own incidents or anything we've talked about thus far? Yes, sir.
Yes, I agree with both of y'all. I wouldn't give too much information. I've left jobs before, and you have an exit interview, and they ask a bunch of questions, and I wasn't as codified then, but, I felt very strange. They wanted to know who you going to work for and things, and I would handle that today like, I don't have anything lined up. I'm just, leaving. I wouldn't tell them anything. As for the lady, see, the beauty, you're going to deal with racism if you own your own business, of course. But the beauty in owning your own business is that dude was working for her. And she could have told him, listen, I don't like this conversation. I don't like the way it's going. And if you want me to hire you again, I would advise you not to get into this type of conversation. Let's keep it strictly professional. And, unlike if you have an employer, you can't really do that. But in that situation, she has every right to tell him, shut up. I mean, Mama.
May I be heard? Again, this is a female caller from New York. I just wanted to say that being that this was an entirely brand new, crazy situation for me, I had never, ever even experienced in my life trying to purchase property. So, when the conversation happened, I was just kind of taken aback by the whole thing. And honestly, I just felt like really embarrassed for her. But the outcome of the situation is that this man had the best prices on doing the service for me. But simply because of the fact that he psychologically sexually sewered another victim of racism in front of her client, I will not go with him. I will not hire him to do the service for me. I mean, he did the inspection. That was part of the whole process. But he offered the service like a prevention service. And he does have the best prices. But because of that, that's just my counter-racist act. He lost the business. That's all I had. I'll mute my line.
Black self-respect, in my view, black self-respect. Some things are significantly more important than our nickels. And racists generally make it very difficult because they try to keep us from having enough nickels for us to be able to function effectively. But sometimes black self-respect should outweigh everything. Other folks have commentary they wanted to share?
Yeah, I have one to share. I was having a conversation with my coworker, and out of the blue, the racist female that I tell you about, who usually is very chatty, Trump supporter, she comes over, and I saw her walk past, and then I saw her walk back past, and each time she looked like, and I could see she had that look of curiosity. What are they talking about? And we were talking very codified, so we weren't talking loud. We were talking about something that, we didn't want nobody to hear us talking about. So she comes over and stands behind him very quietly. And he's, continuing to talk, and I stopped because I see her. So I said, "Hey, how you doing?" So he turns around, hey. So she says, "Hey, what do you guys think about Colin Kaepernick?" So I said, "Oh boy, here she goes." So I said, "Oh, who's that?" So she says, "You don't watch football? Football player." I said, "I'm not too familiar with that guy. What team does he play for?" So she says, "The 49ers." Now, of course, I know who this is. I watch football. So I said, "What did he do?" I said, "Oh, this idiot, he wouldn't stand up for the national anthem. He sat down and this, that, and the other." I said, "Is that against the rules?" "Well, of course, no, it's not against the rules for him not to stand for the national anthem, but how dare he? I fought for this country." And she was in the reserves. And, so, I kept it in question lane. She was, "What do you think?" I said, "I don't know, I remember," and I brought up the basketball player that did it just to divert the conversation because I'm not going to give her an answer. And, so I brought that up and I said, "For religious purposes, do you agree for it then?" And she says, "No, if you're in this country, you stand up for the national anthem. If you don't like it, go back to where you came from." Now, mind you, this is the human resources, ladies. So I'm like, interesting, very interesting, So, I stood up and said, "Listen, I'll talk to you later. I got other work to do." So I never gave her an answer, but I just felt like she was trying to set us up from the start. She wanted to interject. She wanted to hear what we was talking about, and and then she comes over with something that was very trying to set us up to get her point of view out. Now the guy lit, he was, "Man, I like how you handled that, man," because I was about to do it. You never do that. I don't have an opinion for her. I don't care to share my opinion with her. I just want to know what her opinion is. And when she gave it to me, I don't need to hear nothing else because, you already see, how she is. You know what she is. So I just thought that was very interesting. Now, this gentleman that I work with, however, I decided that I was going to correct him because he keeps saying that I don't know. It's just something about this. I could tolerate anti-blackness, but when the white people civilized us, and I'm like, well, it's a time out, though. Listen, man, I think you need to probably go back and rehash history the opposite way. Oh no. And, so that kind of, and he has that mentality, so I just don't, hey, I don't know what to say, but I decide I'm not gonna ever have a conversation with him like that again. Yeah, that's what you think, and that's what you want to think. Go ahead, bro. It wasn't even worth it. But I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Definitely.
Have you heard?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Roz.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I was going to say, wow, I just find it interesting how white people can come into another people's land, take over the land, steal their identity as the owners of the land that they took, and then turn around and say when people come from other countries, I don't care about their religion. I fought for this country. They need to stand up for the national anthem. I find that just like one of the most incredible displays of how white psychopathology works. It's just they have this mentality that they own everything and everybody, and that's how it comes out in that sort of display where, they're the biggest thieves on the planet, but yet, you come to the country they stole, you still got to stand up for the national anthem and show your respect to white supremacy. I just find that to be a very telling insight into their psychopathology. Thank you, and I'll mute my line.
For sure. I think just with the two incidents that Thomas in New York touched on, with the white women coming to interject, I think Roz talks about this all the time, and several others, whites, they're not ignorant about racism. They keep an eye on their niggers, particularly on the job. And I know we have had many victims over the years who have shared about when we're on the job, and if it's one or two black people or a small group of black people, and they're talking seriously, like they're not talking about, oh man, did you see that game last night? And wow, that LeBron James or something, and wow, that's Simone Biles. You're not talking about sports or something goofy. You seem like you might be talking about something serious, quiet, not full of laughter and yelling down the hallway. Oh man, the racist radar, it goes off. Like, wait a minute. They might be plotting an insurrection. What's going on here? Like, immediately, they become concerned. They want to butt into your conversation. I think we've had tons of people who have shared that sort of experience many times over the years. I think it's always great when you can be mindful of that if you're going to have those conversations, just so that you know that sort of thing does attract a lot of white attention. And then when they're coming by, just being mindful about how loud you are talking, even I would say how long you allow that sort of dialogue to go on. You might want to watch, say, all right, we're going to do this for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll break up and, disperse, go our separate ways, continue this later. But when she came in and interjected about Colin Kaepernick, and this is the sort of thing I say with any sort of current event, anything that's dealing with racism and has a lot of people talking, whether it's going to be the presidential election up through November, something like with Dylan Storm Roof, or any of the police shooting things that have happened, or Donald Sterling back a few years ago, anything like that where, that is the big news item for the day or for the week. It's been my experience, racists, they will try to provoke you to comment about that. Either they will say something like, that Dylan Roof, I don't think what he did was that bad. I don't think he should get the death penalty. I mean, it's niggers go out and shoot up black people all the time, not that big a deal. Dylan Roof is all right with me. I would have gave him a hamburger too. They will try and say something like that just to provoke you, to get you upset so that you can get into some sort of spat argument, that sort of thing, or just they want to see what you think. They'll just toss it out there like she did. Yeah, what do you think about that Colin Kaepernick guy? See if they can get you out there to go on a rant on the job. And I think it's great, and America's been racist, and damn America, and, go on a tirade or something of that sort. I think it's always great to avoid that. I've stated consistently for years, you're not supposed to talk about racism on the job. I always think it's a fantastic strategy. I don't even know what you're talking about. I missed that. Who is this guy again? Exactly what Thomas and you said. Who is this guy? I don't even know who that is. What did he do exactly? Oh, wow, that's wacky. I had to think about that. I didn't even know that happened. That's news to me. That's a new one. What do you think? And then you can, boop, that's how you can get out of it too. You can throw it back. That's why I didn't even know about it. What do you think about it? And then, allow them to talk. Wow, that's interesting. And then regardless of what they say, hey, he's a bum. He needs to get out of the country. He's the worst terrorist. He's worse than Bin Laden. Wow, that's fascinating. I have to check up on that once we get out of work. Right back to work. So what is the next meeting we're going to have? Right. Oh, okay. Is Bob in? Okay. Right. You get right back to. Always, I think that is the best way to handle that sort of thing. And then I would say it's the same approach if it happens to be a victim of racism. Like if they come with it was a non-white person, I think, who was talking to Thomas, who said, whites are the most civilized, or however he phrased it, even if it's another black person. And, I don't even like Harriet Tubman. I think it's a disgrace that they're putting her on the $10 bill or whatever. That's interesting. Because as I stated, I'm not here to talk about racism. And I think a lot of folks have pointed out that unfortunately in this system of racism, white supremacy, racists frequently, they are able to use other victims to get at us in our confusion, in our state of fear of upsetting whites. We don't want to lose our job. That we will snitch on other black people, and we can be manipulated to getting other black people on the job in trouble. So I know for a lot of people, they have experienced that, unfortunately. So I would use the same rule with them, that I'm not here to have a debate or conversation with them either about racism. If they're confused and whatever view they take about things, fine, that's on them. That's interesting. Moving right back to workplace, whatever our workplace duties are, whatever we're supposed to be dealing with on the job. That's exactly the way that I would deal with that, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're responding to another black person and they go tell the white people on the job, or the same nosy whites, they come by and hear that conversation, and then they're taking notes and, strategizing about how they're going to neutralize you and get you out of there. So just my views on dealing with that. Other folks?
One important question I did ask her in the middle of my questioning was, is Colin Kaepernick, is he black or white? He's black. He's black. I said, oh, is he? I got to look him up, And she said, I think he has a white parent because he's real white and he's raised by these white people. I said, oh, okay. And, went on to the next question. But, yeah, I had to interject that one.
Always great. That's always great in a workplace situation where they have brought up something like that, and you want to ask about racial classification, particularly if it's any sort of ambiguity about the racial classification of the people that are being referenced. Always a great one if it's a white person that's doing the talking, to get them to give their assessment of the racial classification of any person that's being discussed. I think that's always a good question I would recommend. Other folks have commentary. Folks are spectating. Again, this is not a spectator program. I seriously doubt there's any way you can have a sizable number, and I would say even 5 black people, and not have at least 4 who have commentary on workplace racism, who are not having some sort of difficulties, or at minimum observing things on the job that are directly related to racism, white supremacy. This is not a spectator broadcast. *6 panned up. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Other folks have commentary, your own situation, or if you want to comment on something that's been brought up.
Yes, I do, actually. Oh, you can go ahead. I'll wait till you're finished.
Thank you, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I had a few observations, but to start mine off, I did download a copy of 2 PDF documents. One was talking about, I think it was a diversity plan or something like that, diversity and inclusion plan. And another one was something about EEOC, and I still have to look through it. But they seem to be very extended, like a lot of pages in it, so I still have to look through both of those. But I had at least 2 incidents from this week. The first one was the same white female was we was looking at this news segment, and they were talking about the election coming up, and I think it was about Donald Trump being accused of being a bigot and a racist. Like, that's the term they use. And this female, she said something real interesting. She says, "Well, I don't think that he's a racist. I think he's unfiltered." That's what she said, unfiltered. So, I asked the question, and then I said, "Well, how do you know the difference? Like, how does that qualify, or what qualifies for him to be a racist?" Then she says, "Oh, well, something like the KKK or something." And then I said, "Well, are you saying that he's possibly in?" I said he's possibly the KKK, and she says, "Well, no, not exactly." And they're just making stuff up, and she pretty much got kind of vague in her responses, trying to obfuscate and all that. So that pretty much ended that conversation. But I think she was trying to obviously defend Donald Trump in some kind of way. And number two was that, like, I think I shared this last week, where the white male supervisor, he tried to bait me in a conversation, and what I forgot, I don't think I added this part. Like, the white female, she brought it up, and she left the room. She left the lunchroom, and like as she was leaving, she said, "Oh, well, let me know what he says." He meaning me. So obviously they had some kind of conversation prior to that. Like, "Oh, well, let's see what he'll say." And I ended up doing nothing but asking him questions. So he didn't really get much out of me but some questions. And number three is we had like some people moving around at different desks. Like, I don't know if that was mentioned or brought up much about how, like, the office or the company will make people move around. But it all started out at the beginning of the week where apparently, like, unfortunately, a black female was terminated. And I think the way that they did it, because I heard the white people gossiping about it, and I guess some of the powerful people, they had walked over to wherever the department was, like, after we left, and I guess they pretty much let her know that she was going to be let go. And I found out the next day, and I thought she took the day off, and they pretty much just fired her or whatever. And I guess, like, she was talking with another black person that was in that department, who's been there for years and is very knowledgeable about the things in the department. So the supervisor of that department is going to apparently get some kind of other powerful position, which apparently, presumably, pays more money, because we have one person, powerful white person, retiring later on this month. So pretty much, they just all, know each other, and this other guy's going to get that position. Just it reminds me of when you were talking about how, qualifications, and they don't really need to have no kind of extended education and all of that. They just get it just on that fact that, they're classified as white. So as like after the black female was fired, they apparently gave, I guess, the lead worker or second in command, that's the term that I heard was used, to another black person, and they moved some people around. And the black female in that department I was talking about, it was only 2 black females. The other black female was moved out of her office, like it was like a solo office, and they moved her out front, and there's an empty desk, like in front of her, and they're going to give that department, the new supervisor is going to be another white person, but she doesn't know nothing about the department. So they could have gave that to a black person. So yeah, it's very interesting how they pretty much work as system everywhere, like in all of these jobs. So I'm still learning about this whole thing, but it's real interesting. And that's all I have for now.
Fascinating. That's standard operating procedure. I was going to say is going to be more of that, but I mean, that's everyday, all day activity, regardless of what the white person does. They're never racist. Dylan Roof, Donald Sterling, they're not racist. They might have had a bad day, a slip up, but they're definitely not racist. With that last vignette or the last example that you touched on, that's pretty much cliche within the system. Just being classified as white, that is your qualification, regardless of whatever qualifications, degrees, experience the Negro might have. You just being classified as white, you already got them. That moving your whatever it is, moving your desk around, moving where your workstation is, all of that, I've seen that on a consistent basis, and I think we've even had people who called in before who have shared how they have just moved things around just for the purpose of disrupting some of the non-white workers, or putting them in a less desirable spot. Like if it was a black person and they had an office and maybe it had a window, it's just a comfortable area to work, moving them to a less comfortable area to work. I think we even had a person who was saying that they were in an office and their desk was positioned so that as people walked by, they could directly see their computer to see what they were doing or what they were looking at on their screen. And they tried to move their desk so that that was not the case, so they could turn it so that people couldn't just come by and see exactly what they were looking at. And I think that might have become an issue. Like, hey, wait a minute, you don't have, permission to just be moving things around and whatever. That is standard operating procedure in the workplace. And then just connecting back to you don't have to be qualified. I've seen that regularly as well, where they will give the position to a white person who is not even knowledgeable about what's happening. You have black people that are qualified, who work there, they're experienced. They don't get that position. We'll bring in somebody who is a suspected racist, and they aren't even informed about this. They're going to have to be going to other people to, catch them up, tell them what to do, how things operate or what have you, until they catch on, however long that takes, if they even catch on to what's supposed to be done, what the duties of that position will entail. That's just, and again, in my view, it's totally inaccurate to classify that as quote-unquote white privilege. That is white power to be able to do that, and on a worldwide scale for generations, where you can just have generation after generation after generation of individuals classified as white who can just get these jobs and take care of their families, support themselves, where they are not qualified or not even informed, don't even have the intelligence to do this. That is just further illustration of what we talk about, what we mean when we say system of white supremacy, and there's no redress, nothing can be done about this. That I'm sure lots of folks can relate to that sort of thing on the job as well. Other folks.
The best example of that was, I think it was Bob Costas. We come to find out after he died that he didn't even finish high school. He's on the news. I think, was it Bob Costas? One of the newscasters. Didn't have Peter Jennings. Peter Jennings. There you go. He didn't even finish high school, but he's on the news every night, and he's the person giving us this perspective and sounding more intellectual, and wasn't even qualified.
I had a couple of incidences too, but I wanted to speak to what the previous caller was talking about and what you guys are just speaking about. I think that black male, he's amazing because he has some of the most profound incidences that happen like all the time. And to me, what he was witnessing, I think I brought this up either on the last workplace racism or before that, the fact that white people understand that not only are they melanin deficient, but they're intelligent deficient. That's why I don't believe they're the most intelligent people. I just think they're the most cunning, and it's their cunning that puts them leagues ahead of non-white people. And it's basically they know that they're not, just like I think I brought up the example I used was Hillary Clinton. They already know that white people are going to do illegal things, they're going to do stupid things, or just not know what they're doing. So racism is how they compensate for their deficiency in a way where you just have to be white to get the job, and we'll jump through whatever hoops we have to jump through to make sure this white person gets everything they need to get to be set up right to do the job the way that we want them to. And if they continue to mess up, due to the fact that they may not have the education, which means they are not intelligent enough to do the job, we'll just compensate for that by making sure that they have an extra helper or a couple niggers that can be their assistants to help them really do the job. And it turns out to be that the black people are doing the job every day and the white person gets the credit for it. So I think that's a prime example of the fact that they're not necessarily intelligent, they're just cunning. And they think steps ahead of us in a way in which we have not studied history and studied them well enough to preempt that sort of behavior and start actually doing the same thing on our own for one another as black people. The incidents that I have are very interesting. My wife actually gave me an incident. She went out this past weekend to go to a store to get some things for her parents, who I've talked about are dealing with Alzheimer's. And she went to the store, and it's a medical supply store. And she said she encountered a black male who had mistreated her before, very similar to stories that Dr. Wilson would bring up, where, you know, when she gets to the register, they would, you know, not talk to her properly or just not be the nicest person. So she said this incident, she went to the store. The owner of the store was at the register. And she said that, and this is a white male owner, and she said that he was, pretty pleasant and trying to help her out and give her the help that she needed. So the black male who she had had previous encounters with came up to her and said, "Hey, sister, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time," and basically acting as if they were friends or that they knew each other in some way. So my wife said hello. She was cordial and whatever. But the thing that stood out the most was the white male owner immediately said to him, "What's this sister stuff? Do you know her or something like that?" And my wife said immediately when he asked that question, the black male did not know how to answer the question. So he just literally just kowtowed, and basically the white male owner ended up basically sending him back into the plantation to do something else, because he didn't even know how to answer the white male's question as to what did he mean when he called her sister, and why was he calling her sister. And I just found that very fascinating because, again, even though he had mistreated my wife before, he, in that moment, was attempting to somehow be positive in some way, shape, or form. But just the idea that him using the term sister, I think in the white male's mind, gave him the idea that they were coming together in a way that plantation masters don't want black people coming together. So he instantly asked about it, and again, he stayed in the question lane, and the black male was completely flabbergasted, did not know what to say, and she said literally it was almost like, and she just described it, she said it was almost like a yes sir boss thing, where he just couldn't answer. The guy just said, "Get back to work," basically. He was like, "Okay, boss," and he just literally disappeared. That's one. The other incident had to do with the black male who I was talking about before, who was transitioning from his position at the company I'm at now, and once he gets set up there, he said he wants to pull me and a few other people over with him. So he left the job yesterday, was his last day. And the day before that, Wednesday, we were talking, and he said that he was telling me what was happening to him once he gave them his notice that he was leaving. Now, there's a stark difference between my supervisor, who was a black lesbian female, who, from what I understand, they had given her, they had the whole department give her a send-off when we realized that she was leaving. Everybody came together, all of the department heads, because she had done a lot of work to basically hold down what was happening, because these people keep making racist decisions that are causing the company to really fluctuate in regards to the quality of the work experience. So there's droves of people leaving. And he said to me that they had given her over $1,000 when they ended up having like a going away little shindig at a bar, and they the company contributed $1,000 for them to go to this bar, and everyone was pissy drunk by the end of the evening, and, they hung out, whatever the case may be. When he gave them their notice, and he's actually a trainer, he was one of the main trainers, so he would train basically all the new employees, no matter what department they were in, he would train them. He was one of the people who would train them, and he was the only black male that would train them. So he was supposed to also, just like my supervisor, she was supposed to go to Arizona. When the decisions started coming from up top that were having a negative effect on not just her, but the people at the bottom, she changed her mind about going to Arizona. They still didn't mistreat her. when he said that he would not go to Arizona because he also has a young child, which my supervisor does not. She has no children, but he has a young daughter, and he was very uncomfortable with leaving her in New York City and moving to Arizona. And essentially, as everything developed, he's decided I'm not going either because I don't want to relocate to Arizona and then something, horrific happens and I'm stuck in Arizona. My daughter's in New York and I have no access to her. So he changed his mind and he ended up getting this other job. So he told me from the moment he mentioned to them that he would no longer be with the company and that he was not relocating to Arizona, which basically all the other trainers, which were all white and I think one Latino, the one Latino is still here. All the other ones already transitioned to Arizona. They're already there. And he said the moment he let them know that he would not be going, they immediately, it was like he was locked out of the plantation. He said all of his meetings that he had, because he had different meetings for people who were still coming into the job that he had to train, they canceled them all. He was supposed to have a few meetings with some of the higher-ups in regards to things that he would have been able to help them facilitate before he left. They canceled all of those meetings. So essentially, he just started to come in late. He was just like, you know what? They're basically giving me a break. I just have to come into the job and show them my face, and I'll get my paycheck. But ultimately, and then he started canceling his own meetings. He was like, I'm not going to any of these meetings. They already let me know by how they're treating me that I'm basically out of here. So they're treating me like I'm out of here, even though I still have time left that I was going to, spend on the job to give them my notice and do what I'm supposed to do as an employee before I leave, give them the proper notice and still perform my duties to the best of my ability. But obviously they didn't care about him performing his duties. It's basically, nigga, you going to another plantation? Well, you need to go tomorrow, but you gave us the notice, so we'll do that. But you basically have no job. We're not going to have you do anything whatsoever. And I just find that to be very interesting because the difference between how my supervisor was treated, and this also goes back to some of the things that we talked about on this program before, where to be an anti-sexual black person gives you leeway in the system of white supremacy that heterosexuals don't get, because heterosexuals are a threat to the system due to the fact that heterosexuals are procreating black people and they don't want us procreating. When you come in and you let them know or they see and they sense that you are gay or lesbian, you've already compromised yourself, and in their mind, that's one less set of niggas being born in the world. So I find just the job that she did and the fact that she was lesbian and all of this, she got all of these benefits when she left, besides the fact that, like I said, she did incredible work while she was there. This guy also did incredible work, but because he decided to leave and he was not going to the plantation in Arizona, he got basically kicked off the plantation before he actually left the plantation. So I just found that telling, and that is my workplace incidents that I wanted to report. Thank you so much, and I'll mute my line.
Fascinating. Wow. I had commentary on both, but I'll go in order. Your wife's situation, I think that was the one you started off with, where she went to the store, what have you, to help out your in-laws and her parents. And the male that was helping her, hey sister, and is greeting her, he knew her, what have you, and then the plantation master comes up, hey, what are you doing? What is the sister stuff? And he's stunned. I mean, that's why I say it's terrorism. That's what we're talking about. And that's one of the things why I say it's very important, even keeping this in mind, like with Thomas's situation where he said the black guy on the job was like, that the racists, they're the most civilized and all that stuff. I don't get in, I do not encourage, do not suggest even getting in debates and what have you with other non-white people on the job just because of the fear factor. I mean, you can point out a lot of other things and, lack of black self-respect and however you want to think about it. But in my view, fear is a huge aspect of what the system of white terrorism produces, fear. And I think most human beings have some level of fear about losing their job, about being terrorized, about being abused. I think that's most of us. And particularly if you are not focused on racism, white supremacy as being the dominant force amongst people in the known universe, I mean, the fear can really get you because then you're not really thinking about this. You're not thinking about what's the best way to respond. You're not thinking about, okay, so my supervisor's a racist. What should I be doing to neutralize this, to counter this as best I can on a daily basis? So when he comes in and makes that sort of comment, what are you doing being friendly to this nigger woman? What is wrong with you? Sorry, yes, go do my job. that's kind of the way we have been groomed. That's the way we've been conditioned for centuries now, to not be nice, to not be pleasant, to not be courteous to other black people. I think many folks have commented that just that alone, being nice and trying to be helpful to other black people on the job, can be one of the best ways to get yourself fired, to get yourself in trouble with other whites. I think we've had a lot of people testify to that. Just making an effort to do that seems to work against the system of racism, white supremacy, which is why we should try to do more of it. But I think just that alone, just to kind of keep that in mind when you're on the job, if you're being courteous, if you're being professional in how you talk to, how you treat other black people, whether they're other black coworkers or if you're in some sort of position where you have clients, where your patrons, people that are coming to utilize your business or what have you, are going to be black people, non-white people, just trying to be as courteous as you can with them, as patient and professional as you can with them, that right there might, stir the ire of racists on your job, and have that in mind. If somebody says something, what are you doing being all curt? What do you mean calling that person some Mr.? I think even Mr. Fuller has said that when he has called other black people in a workplace capacity, when he's referred to them sir, ma'am, or called them Mr. Robinson, Mrs. Smith, calling them, speaking with them with some courtesy, with some respect, calling them by their last name and that sort of thing, that upset whites on the job. So just having that in mind, how would you respond? Is there a problem? She comes in here all the time. She's one of our best customers. I try to make sure that she feels comfortable on each and every visit, something I try to do with all of our customers. Is that incorrect? Should I not do that? Stay in the question lane, too. With the second incident where you were talking about your own personal situation, that's like, wow, that is a lot. That's why if I was going to pick one thing to focus on, if other people have commentary, they can, feel free as well. If I was going to pick one thing to focus on, I think number one, or at least I have consistently tried to point out, it doesn't matter if you do excellent work. That is really irrelevant in the system of white. You can be phenomenal, bring in lots of clients, make lots of money for the company, increase the efficiency of how things are done. That is totally irrelevant if you are classified as a nigger in the system of white supremacy. And it seems like you were saying that it seems like you all had lots of black people that were really proficient and doing great work there and what have you. And as soon as it's, well, no, I'm going to value being a black parent. I have a black child, and I want to make sure that I'm there and I'm able to be a father. What? This nigga's whatever, nigger, leave today if you're going to, or whatever. I mean, that is consistent within the system of racism, white supremacy, to be expected. And that sort of thing I have seen before, where that can really bother some black people, like from a psychological standpoint, where they don't understand that this type of thing happens within the system of racism. It doesn't matter what type of great work you've done. It doesn't matter if you have invested years of your time and energy working for this company and giving of yourself and doing overtime and all of that to help them do better. That is totally irrelevant. Like, this is your classification. You're here to be mistreated. And it can really, really bother some people from an emotional standpoint when this sort of thing happens. And that's why just having that understanding of what racism, white supremacy is and how it works. I thought it was a phenomenal observation in terms of the difference in treatment. If you're engaged in anti-sexual behavior, how you are treated, as opposed to if you sex is male, female, this is what I'm on. And particularly, I'm about being a quality black parent. Oh man, that is definitely like 8 thumbs down on the job. That's not something that we're trying to promote, encourage at all. And just noting the difference in treatment. There are even some studies that have come out to back that, and we've had guests who talked about that on the job as well. So in my just excellent observations, just to keep that kind of thing going. And as I've stated before, being observant, even when the racism, white supremacy is not happening to you specifically, you can still be observing how this is impacting other white people and non-white people on your job.
Also, I wanted to add a slight addendum to that as well, because you just said something that made my antenna literally stand up immediately. When you talked about the fact that they don't care about the type of job you do. If you do a great job, you could be the best person in the company for the job you do, and they'll still, mistreat you because you're black. What I found was the problems that the company is going through is essentially they're a startup company that has been around for maybe 3 years now, and everything during the whole Affordable Care Act and the setup of it was going very good in the beginning. but they started to have issues due to some of the layers of how the Affordable Care Act works. So for the last 2.5 years, they were basically throwing money at the problem. Now, mind you, the different problems they had that they were throwing money at were problems that my supervisor had the answers to, and all they had to do was listen to what she said. They didn't. I had a coworker that used to sit next to me. She was on my team. She was also non-white. They had issues with the claims process when members went to the doctor and needed to get their claims paid in order for their visits to the doctor to be covered, and if they had a copay or a deductible, they would pay whatever amount that was due. If it was covered in full, it was covered in full. And they've had a lot of issues with the claims process. The woman that sat next to me has been in the healthcare field for a long time, highly knowledgeable, and she was giving both the supervisors and the claims department viable information that could have streamlined the claims process that would have saved money. They never listened to her either. And that's another reason why I say white people are not the most intelligent. They're just cunning. And like you just said, when you understand the system, that the number one operating force behind the behavior that you are witnessing is white supremacy, then the situations that I just talked about where these non-white people were giving this company that's, a multi-million, almost $1 billion company, insight into how to streamline their process so that they could save money, and the situation that is taking place now would not be taking place. They basically said, screw you non-whites. We're going to do things the way we want. And now that things are at a point where they can no longer throw money at the problem, everyone at the bottom is suffering. So I just find that to be just very, very interesting, just in the fact that white people, like you said, they don't care what kind of job you do. As long as the system of white supremacy exists, then that's what's going to trump everything else. And I just found that to be profound when you actually said that, because it made me think about it like, yeah, these people really had good ideas, and a lot of the stuff could have been preemptively avoided, but because of white supremacy and white people's allegiance, the religion, that's more important than actually running a viable business. And this should just give insight into how many businesses have lost billions of dollars just based on white people practicing racism. And the other thing is, when you talked about the black male, my coworker who was trying to be a father to his daughter and just do things right by her, when we understand that because of white supremacy, it is the job in particular is the redux of the plantation experience. So when they see us, we're supposed to be the same chicken George niggas that they've been looking at for the last 500 years. So when you display black self-respect in the form of being a parent and applying that information, and mind you, this guy is a guy who we used to have conversations off the job about white supremacy. He understood how it functions, so he told him nothing. When he left the company, he gave him no information whatsoever, which I didn't have to tell him that. He already knew what to do. And, I just think that when we understand that that's how they view us, they want us to function in the same dysfunctional ways that they have inculcated us with for generations, then we can understand that when we show any black self-respect, whether it's through being a parent or helping another black person, you're not supposed to help another nigga. You're a nigga. You're supposed to do what I tell you to do and what I've trained you to do, which is to hate what you see in the mirror. So when we understand that all of these things are this is the operating system of white supremacy, then absolutely nothing should be of a surprise to you when white people do it. Because as long as it's about racism, they will spend trillions of dollars in order to kill black people or mistreat us. Thank you, and I'll meet Milan.
Absolutely. Great observations. That is what we're dealing with. Number again, 641-715-3640, and the code 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Lots of spectators today. I hope that means, at least for the time being, people are not having difficulties on the job. I would say be prepared, even if this was a relatively quiet, painless week on the plantation. It's been my experience that just means racists are planning for things ahead, so you should be too. But I doubt that is the case. I think people are just spectating and not sharing. But again, feel free, chime in if you have commentary, observations, and or suggestions. We did have a person who was asking offline about suggestions, ways of minimizing conflict with other black people. That has been a very, very popular topic over the years in terms of having conflict with other non-white people on the job, particularly for people who work in situations where the preponderance of the employees, preponderance of your coworkers are black people. You don't really have a lot of white people specifically, directly anyway, in the company or place that you work, and how to keep things from, if it's a lot of the name calling and picking at you about different things and the gossiping about people, just how to deal with that, and particularly how to deal with that in a way where it does not come across as, well, who do you think you are? And you don't want to talk to us, and you're just stuck up, and you don't even want to associate with the rest of you. You don't want to hang out with us when we're having lunch and that sort of thing. How to make it so that you can be as constructive as possible in the workplace without getting involved in any of the vices and things that go on if it is kind of a toxic environment with other black people on the job. Do folks have people figured out any strategies for neutralizing that sort of thing that seems to work well to keeping out of trouble with that?
I would say, in all honesty, I think you said what I do, which is keep it business, keep it about the job, be very cordial, very respectful to other black people, but really keep it all about the position or bettering your situation on the job. And if you can do that, and even if they bring up other things, whether it's sports or love and hip hop or whatever nonsense, I would just vacate the premises. Once that sort of conversation begins, I'm out of there. Oh, where you going? Oh, I had something to do, take care of some work related stuff, whatever the case may be. But I feel if you can be just focused on the job, I keep to myself quite a bit. I'm friendly with everybody, black, white, whatever. And I just really keep to myself as much as possible. Even when I go on my lunch break, I don't go to lunch with other people. I just usually put my headphones in, I listen to the cows, and I'll read a book. And other than that, I would think that's probably the path of least resistance, because I think once you allow yourself to get into any sort of conversations like that, especially because of how we've been trained for so long, we become comfortable extremely fast, because essentially when you're able to, or when you get into those sorts of discussions, it kind of facilitates black people doing things that end up getting us in trouble with white people on the job. So I think that that's probably the best thing to do, try to keep to yourself, and keep as much of your conversation as possible focused on work. And if there's a situation where there's multiple black people around and you see the conversation going in a direction that's not work-related, just trying to remove yourself from that situation, but not remove yourself in a way where it's conspicuous. You can even just say, hey, I'm about to go take care of something, or I need to go, if it's your lunch break, hey, I need to go run out to the store or do something, whatever the case may be, to just remove yourself from that scenario. Because I find just the act of being around a lot of black people on a job run by white people, it's almost just like I remember growing up back in the days, you could stand on the corner, a bunch of guys could just stand on the corner, and it wasn't as big a deal. Whereas now, when you have a lot of black people together, there's a lot of attention, whether it's from whites, police, whatever the case may be. And I find that to be the case on the job too. If you have groups of black people having these discussions, it's going to draw attention that you don't want. So I think that's probably the best that I can contribute, and I would like to hear some of the other suggestions that other callers have. Thank you.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the question about how to deal with other victims of racism in the workplace, and without being distant from them and feeling, them thinking that you're stuck up and things of that nature. I think that the strategy that may work best is to understand that you're on a battleground. You get up every morning and you go into another field of war in the system of racism, white supremacy. Now, as black people, I get it. We always want to have this communal family feeling, especially when we're all in an atmosphere together. But you are at war, and you are on, like you said, all the time, you are on enemy territory. So to keep that in mind, and also NCNC, no contact, no conflict, not only works best with white people, it also works. It also strategy that must be employed with other victims of racism in the workplace. No contact, no conflict. Keep it straight business. You don't have to make excuses as to why you're not talking or why you're not doing anything. You just concentrate on the fact that you are at war and you're there to do a job and to do a job only and to go home and to have John White Doe sign your paycheck so that you can make a living and feed your family. Another thing that comes to mind is something that Mr. Fuller spoke about in one of the recordings that you played during another episode of Workplace Racism Show. And he spoke about how if you think that that black person on your friend is your job and is going to have your back, think again, especially when a problem arises. You think they're going to be the ones to be there to sign that, to back you up when you have that, you're filing that complaint or that quote-unquote grievance. You're not. They're not. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You have no allies in the workplace. You are on your own. You're not there to be friends or socialize. You know, there is a time for you to deal with other black people in that way, and that is when you're off the job and when you're in your home or when you're in your social environment and you're doing what you're doing. But while you're there and you're trying to make some money, I think that the best thing to do is just to stay focused on the fact that you're on a battlefield. And that's all I had. I'll mute my line.
Hear. The caller at 5771, last four digits 5771. Did you have commentary you wanted to share, workplace racism?
Oh, yeah. How you doing, guys?
Right poorly.
Well, I wanted to ask this. I want to put this out there because I had a previous job where, and you know, as I go on in life, you know, at these workplaces, dealing with racism, you know, I had this one job where basically I tried to be by myself. You know, I didn't talk to anybody. I was just there to, you know, do my job. And I ended up becoming a target because they noticed me as a quiet person. And I never went to, you know, I tried to excuse myself from any of the parties that I went to because, you know, the thing is, too, is that, like, I don't drink. And white people love to drink. And it's like, I'm not going to do anything that that I don't enjoy doing. So whenever they, you know, had this plan to go out after work to drink, I'm like, no, I got something else to do, like go home and be with my family. But it ended up, like I said, I ended up being a target because one day the managing partner of the office came into my office and asked me, "Is everything okay? You don't come to the parties or anything like that?" And I had to sit there with my black corporate America face, I guess is what you call it, because, you know, as black men, you know, we have to wear different masks in corporate America, and tell him that, you know, everything was fine. I just had to go home. And so it's like I became a target because of the fact that I wasn't associating with people. I wasn't going to the parties because I had no interest of doing it. So, you know, my question I want to put out there is how do you deal with that in regards to not being too quiet? Because I think probably that was my mistake of just being too quiet because, you know, I just went there, did my 9 to 5, didn't want to go to any of the parties, didn't want to associate with anybody, and I just had myself labeled as an outcast. So if there was any suggestions that I could have done I ended up having to leave the place because eventually I was going to get fired because, like I said, I became a target. So I ended up leaving that place. So any suggestions on how to deal with that? Because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that has gone through that situation as well. So I will go ahead and use my line.
Appreciate that. I know that has been something that has been brought up quite a few times as well down through the years, and I've even heard victims of racism speak to that even before we were doing the cows, where they were just quiet, and sometimes it wasn't even a counter-racist strategy. It was just they were just not very outgoing people to begin with. That was just their personality. It was just kind of, I'm quiet to myself. I'm not, the loudest person in the room. I come here, I do my job, and keep it moving. And that was taken to be a problem by suspected racists on the job. My suggestion is, if it's, because you said part of it was, some of it at least, was after hours get-togethers, that sort of thing, particularly if there's alcohol involved, I would just not do that. And if I was asked, I would explain that I really have a lot of sensitivities about substance abuse, alcohol, and I really make an effort to avoid being in situations, if it's going to be a bar, people consuming alcohol. I've had experiences with alcoholism or substance abuse with people that I care about, so that's just something that I'm very sensitive to, and I make a conscious effort to avoid those type of environments. And I think, generally speaking, this is a system of white supremacy, and black people are mistreated for any reason, no reason at all. But my suspicion would be that will suffice for many situations. I think that might be something that people can respect, accept generally. Now, workplace, my recommendation, and what I say consistently, is you're not there to be aloof. You're not there to not talk to people. I encourage being courteous. You can address everybody. Morning, Helen. Morning, John, to people on a first name basis. If Mr. Johnson, Miss Smith, you can speak to everybody. I just consistently encourage, keep it on the job. And I even encourage, look for ways where you can be talking to people to get constructive information about the job. I consistently kind of talk about, I would be steering the conversation away from gossip. I would get a reputation for being someone who is not about gossip, who is about business. But if we're in conversation, we're chatting about things that are related to the job, things that are going to help me be able to do my job better, and or I'm getting better information about the work environment that I'm in. So I'm learning more about things that are happening here, maybe things that are going to be happening down the road, just becoming much more informed about where I work and the people that I work with on a daily basis. That's great. And no one should be able to fuss at you for saying, well, you're not coming in here and, talking to us about scandal last night. And why aren't you coming in here and, talking to us about, the Olympics and just things that don't have anything to do with it, because that's not what I'm getting paid for, unless I've been misinformed. You can ask that too as a question form. But that's the sort of thing that I encourage, where you talk, you speak to everybody. When you come in, you speak to everybody. When you leave, and you ask, you talk, you speak up when it's related to the job. But you get a reputation for not being about the gossip and just, talking about what wardrobe they had this week and that sort of just silliness, what the office romance is of the month. That I don't participate in any sort of nonsense like that at all. And I think even some of our other folks have spoken up. If you get some sort of critique about you're not a, as they call it, team player, or any other such monikers like that, I would want a specific definition. Exactly what do you mean when you say I'm not a team player, or if they say you're antisocial, or however it's phrased. Ask them to explain what that means, and what are the qualities, what exactly should I be doing, and get them to give it to you explicitly, and then you can evaluate whether or not you're doing that. And if you're not, then you'll know the exact things that they want you to do. And again, as I stated, if it's something after hours, that I'm not a team player because I don't go after hours and drink with everybody. Well, I just don't do alcohol. Is this, a part of my duties? Is this something where I'm not going to get positive reviews, workplace evaluations, because I'm not willing to consume alcohol after job hours? Is that, what I'm being told? And just get them to explain it to you. If it's, as long as it's not that, I would just do what I do on the job. And I think even we've had the conversation with some other folks who dialed in over the years that if it's during work, like sometimes they'll have we all go to lunch together, that type of thing, that maybe you can plan that out to maybe do one a month. If they do this sort of thing every week, or if they do this sort of thing every other week, then maybe you plan it out and you do maybe one a month, or maybe you do one every other month. That way that they do see your face, you are there, you don't do any alcohol, but you do at least go out so they can say, well, yeah, he has done a few. He doesn't do every one, but, she does come hang out with us every once in a while, just so that they can't say that, oh, man, he disses us every time, or she never hangs. They can't say that. If that makes any sense. That's the sort of recommendation that I generally give out to try to ward off if they say that you're too quiet. Now we're going to attack you because you're not talking at all.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Gus, I think that is a brilliant thing. You talked about this before. There's a lot of what you're talking about. I do. Another thing I would add to that has helped me quite a bit is I set the precedent very early about how I function, and I've done this at this job as well, where very early where we had to introduce ourselves to each other when I first started in the position. And I remember because I think I brought this up before, the fact that this was the first job I worked where they actually allowed people to drink on the job. So there's like a fridge with beer, and every now and then they'll have like hard liquor that they give out and whatnot as like little gifts and things. So people drink on this job very regularly. And one thing I did very early is that, I said I don't drink. And the main thing I say is when I get hired to do a job, I'm not hired to be friends with anybody. I said, if I happen to make friends on the job, I look at that as a fringe benefit, but I'm here to do a job, and that's what my focus is going to be. So from day one, they understand this black male's about his job. He's letting us know he's not here to be frivolous, having conversations and being buddy-buddy. And I'll tell them, hey, I'm cordial with everyone. I'm very nice. Very respectful to everyone. Black, white, doesn't matter. You're going to get, the same sort of, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. But I'm about the job. And what I found is that I don't encounter those sorts of scenarios where people are like, oh, well, you're so quiet. They actually understand. And I've actually had people say, like, hey, this guy's really about his job, and he's very cordial. I've actually been told before I'm one of the nicest people on the job. But they also understand he's focused, he keeps to himself, he minds his business, and I set that precedent from day one. So they understand I'm not going to kick around, nonsense with you. We're not going to be talking about empire. We're not going to be talking about the basketball game. I'm here to do a job. And if we happen to get to a point via working together that we become friendly, then that's just a fringe benefit. That's a little extra gift that I'm getting from this job. But the reality is I'm here to do a job, and that's pretty much it. That precedent is set from day one, so that there is no room for them to say, well, you were talkative when you first started on the job, and now you're getting quiet. It's just focus. Good morning, good afternoon. At the end of the day, I'm leaving. And at this particular job, they always tend to have after hours. Actually, they do all the time. They've never had one on a Friday. It's always been like a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday. It's never been on a Monday, and it's never been on a Friday. And because I live so far, I always get to say I'm not going. And that's what I do every single time they have. I have to wake up early tomorrow morning to get to work. It takes me over 2 hours to get home, so I'm not going to sit here, drinking with you in the bar until 8 o'clock and then get home after 11 to wake up at 4 to get back in this job at 8:30 in the morning. It's not happening. So when I leave, I'm out of here. And essentially, that's just the way I function, and I let them know from the beginning. And I think that's one thing that might be able to help is if you set that precedent, especially if they have like introductory meetings where you can kind of introduce yourself to the group and kind of tell things about yourself. Those are the things I tell about myself right then and there so that they understand. If that meeting happens the very first week on the job, somewhere in that first week, I'm going to say those words so that everybody's there, supervisors, other coworkers, they understand this guy's about his job, and that's pretty much it. And he's cordial, he's friendly, but he's about his job. So I think that might help, and hopefully other people have other good ideas they can chime in with to help the black male caller. Thank you.
Kind of run.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
That was excellent advice, Raj. It really, really was, Raj. It really was great advice. To put that out there from the beginning. That is in a way that they will understand. That won't put them off. You know what I mean? That's a really good idea. But something that Gus mentioned years ago when I first started listening to the cows was under the area of religion. I noticed in the workplace that people who classify themselves as Hasidic Jews, as Sikh Indians, as Muslims, they actively are in their religion, and they often wear the clothing or things that are part of that religion outwardly. No one comes up to them and gossips and stuff. I noticed that. It seems as if they're being taken a bit more seriously. So something that Gus suggested years ago, like I said, was that to tell people that you're a Jehovah's Witness and you don't celebrate anything. I can't wait to use that one on my next plantation. I think that would work great. I mean, once you're serious, number one, and they see that you're not running around gossiping, on top of the fact that you tell them that you're a Jehovah's Witness and you don't celebrate anything, they look at you in a whole nother light. You know, that's kind of like something that they don't want to be bothered with or penetrate. So I think that if we could use that area, because white people lie to us all the time. The whole thing is a lie. The world is a lie. So I think that that's a good thing to use, that that you're a Jehovah's Witness, and not to manipulate or the situation or to insult or belittle anybody who is a Jehovah's Witness, but they don't celebrate anything. So if that's going to keep white people away from you, why not use it? That's all I had on my line.
Let's see. We'll get caller in Florida, and then we'll get Thomas in New York, and then our caller in Ohio as well.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just wanted to say I remember a couple of years ago about how some of the white people on the job would try to get me to go to lunch with them. And the responses I would come up with is that I was trying to save money, so I would bring food from the house, and they seemed to be very receptive to that. And another thing I would say is, I noticed that the supervisor, he got real upset and he got on your case when y'all got that lunch. When y'all got back from lunch the last couple of times. So, hey, I don't want to be late. And even one time, she even said that, you don't want to go with us because I'm white. So, I started laughing at the person. So she started laughing too. So I guess she thought I was going to get angry. But she ended up saying that she understood what I meant. So they never really bothered me about it anymore. So that's all pretty much advice that I have right now.
I dig that one. I'm broke. I'm on hard luck. I can't afford to go out. I have to bring. I can only do peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I like that one, and that might permanently stop them from asking. I just can't afford it. I have to, just bring my little sandwich or whatever from home and eat here at my desk. And also, I pitched it just so that you can avoid if they try to, question you, or if there is someone on your job who is like a current practicing Jehovah's Witness. I've said that you could give it to him this way as well. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, so I don't practice anything. I'm not practicing now, but that laid the foundation because that's the way that I was brought up, not celebrating anything. I just continue that even though I am not a current practicing Jehovah's Witness. That way it will stop anybody from intruding you're doing this and blah 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 and asking any questions, because I'm not practicing now, but it did lay the foundation for me not participating in any of that stuff currently, any of the holidays, anything like that. I've encouraged people to use that as well to stop them from asking you to engage in a lot of silliness. Thomas in New York, and then our caller in Ohio.
Yes, sir. Great. Great advice. First, I want to say what the lady caller said was, they don't mess with the Muslims and they don't mess with the Indians or the Jews who are in their proper person. But we come in pretty Western-like, and that gives them the ability to inform us. And I remember there was a guy who used to have a blog program. It hasn't come on in years, but his name was Asir Lucas Tears, and he was into the Moorish thing. But his thing was, we should be dressing like this every day because they would treat us a lot differently when you're in your proper, it's just a different way they look at you when you're in your proper place, or in something other than what's theirs, As far as, and I know this probably isn't codified, it probably wasn't, what I used to do to get out of things, that's before I was codified. And if it was, people was just going places and I didn't want to go, or I probably didn't like someone, so I didn't go. And one of the things that I would do was tell the white people something very niggerish. meaning like, I can't go, my friend got shot. They never question that type of stuff. Like when the guys say, I'm broke, trying to save money, see, that's a black, they don't question how he's in there. They just trying to save some money. Like that type of thing, they don't question. That's only if you feel like you're obligated to give them an answer. And in a lot of workplace situations, they do make you feel obligated to give them answers. But if you do have to go, it's best to go very codified. If you do drink, don't drink. Maybe say, have a good excuse not to drink. I was drinking last night. I'm going somewhere afterwards, or I got to drive. Something. But if you do have to go, because I've had a job where I was forced to go to these things because I had a plan, and I would advise you not to drink. And I'm locked in.
Ashe. Caller in Ohio, did you have commentary you wanted to share?
Yeah. Hello. Sorry about that. It seems like as soon as you click me in, the perfect storm in my house happens. So, everybody converts. So I'm sorry about all that. But anyway, just want to say hello to you, Gus, the host, and to all the callers and listeners. I just think that I know it's hard because, like, the gentleman said, you come to work, you sit down, you're there to do a job. You go and, do your job and you go home and you just don't want to be bothered with all that stuff. But it's just so sad because, today it's almost like in anything, if you decide not to, how do I say this, be a part or take part of it, for white people, that brings about nervousness. Just the type of thing, I know, like Alicia Keys is doing this no makeup thing, and I was reading an article today where you had people coming at her because she decides she doesn't want to wear makeup. So if we do something that, like I said, I just come away to my job or go home. They are. I mean, that just it makes them nervous. It's somewhere in them it sets something off of them, because also too, it's almost like we're the playthings and that. Just our history in this country. Because there was a time in this country, they could tell us to do anything, and we had to do it. It was just no questions asked, or you got no questions asked, or you got a beating, or you could have gotten killed, or beaten and killed. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I think what Roz was saying about how because they don't know us, and he's right when he says they are ignorant. They don't know. They are the dummies of the world, and so they want to be around us because really we make them human, and so they study us, and then that's how then they go present themselves. Like they know everything, or what have you. Like he was saying at his previous job, that here you had black people or non-white, non-black people who had possible ideas that could have helped this company save money, and yet they forsook all that. Now the company is in bad shape financially. So I just think that we have to, keep that in mind, that some of what this is. I just think that you have to figure out what works for you. I worked at a company, and matter of fact, it was a law firm that dealt with real estate things, and they drank too, and I'm not a drinker. So they would go out and stuff like that, and the only reason why I would go, because there was a young black girl that I worked with, and we hit it off pretty good. She liked to drink. She could laugh and talk with them. So, I would go with them. I would have like a soda or something, and maybe stay for like 45 minutes, and then I was out. And then I had made up my mind, too. I only would go when I wanted to go. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes it has to be, I don't want to say has to be, but if they're doing something, sometimes you may have to decide just when you want to go, I'm going to go this one time, just to kind of like show my face and, maybe set a period of time, how long you're going to be there and go. I had a good friend who had some cousins, and they were like in corporate America, and her cousin's name was Elaine. And so Elaine, I remember one time we was around, and she was even telling the story. She said they would have to go to these functions just because of the work that they did. And, this story, this has been over like 20 years, so, they making 80 and 90,000 back then. There's a lot more money. Not that I was not having it today, but, there's a lot of money back then. And so she said they would have those functions like Christmas parties and, what a retirement party and stuff. And she said she and her husband, and she said she was just determined. She knows she had to work in this, but she said they were just not going to take all her time. So she said they would go to these functions, and she said that maybe they would be there like a half an hour, and then they would arrange, and this was back before cell phones, for like somebody in the family to call, and you had the party, it's like, oh, we got a call here from Mr. Gus. There's a phone call, you could take the call over there. And then she would go answer the phone, and then she would come back and she would say, oh, I'm just sorry, there's something going on at home. I got to go. And she said they would plan that. She and her husband, they would plan that, she said, because their thing was they were not going there. They were not going to be there all night long. Part of it was like, I have to work with these people. I can't stand some of them. And so, that was their plan. So I'm just throwing out, sometimes you might have to find yourself going to these things, and you might have to find a family member or a friend or somebody to call you on your cell phone that, hey, you need to come home, something's going on. And, you got to have an explanation because, when you go back to work the next day, somebody's going to want to ask you, well, what happened, So I just think that you have to figure out for yourself how you're going to do it. If you just decide you're not going to do it, then just don't do it, and then you also too have to factor in there may be some backlash. You see what I'm saying? But I just want to say, because those are just some of the things, like I say, the one with my friend's cousin, and I know how myself, just so happened, though, it was a black girl in the department I work with, and a young black lady, and we got along really good, and, she got to go, so when I would go, I would be there with her, and like I said, good 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I was up and I was out, and I went to these things when I felt like going to them, because I'm like that too. I want to come to work, do my job, and then I want to go home. I'm not also just socializing and stuff like that, because we know how these people are. But I just think that I would say hopefully there's maybe some solutions that may be to help the young man. We just have to figure it out, for ourselves. And I'll mute my line. Thank you.
For sure. Definitely. I have encouraged that consistently, particularly the holiday season is rapidly approaching, where you have all the end of the year parties and Christmas celebrations and Thanksgiving and all that other goofiness. If you have to participate, because we have heard from listeners before where there can be retaliation if you don't go to some of these parties, even if they're after hours events, there can be retaliation if you don't go. You already have a code for that, and some of our listeners have shared how they codified that. If I go, I'm gonna go with my partner, or if you have a husband, a wife, whatever it is, we're gonna go together. Because sometimes they really cut a fool because there's alcohol and people want to make all sorts of tacky sexual advances and what have you, or commentaries. So I'm going to go. I'm going to have my partner present. We're going to have a set amount of time that we're going to be there, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is, and then we're going to leave. And we already have that planned out, how we're going to exit. We're seen, we make our appearance, and then we exit promptly. So you have a code if you even want to do that. And some people say, I'm not doing that either, and whatever consequences come, fine, I'll deal with that as well. But figuring out how you are going to codify for yourself, your individual situation, and what's going to work best for you, extremely important. How we proceed on the job. If you had your own experience you wanted to share, if you wanted to comment on anything you've heard thus far, feel free. Certainly, if folks have suggestions for how you deal if you are in a majority non-white, majority black work environment, and your problem is dealing with trying to neutralize just being in a non-constructive environment with predominantly black people. If folks have other ideas or suggestions on the best way to deal with that, if there's a lot of name calling or people are just engaged in a lot of discourteous behavior, that would be good as well. Please do not wait till the last minute. If you have commentary you would like to share, feel free. If folks are satisfied, that is fine as well. Again, I will say that is a little suspicious because we do have a significant number of folks who are listening, certainly a significant number of people who dialed in via phone line. Most of the people who dialed in did not participate. So we have a lot of spectators. I will again encourage, if we have that many people who are doing great, all of this sounds foreign to you, whites are not giving you any trouble, and or if you work in a predominantly non-white environment, they're not giving you any problems either, well then, hoorah, you should certainly have codified exactly how you pulled that off, written details of what you're doing and or saying to have such a wonderful work experience, and you should certainly be at the top of the list for people to invest in the cows. Racism-notes.blogspot.com, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal is in the top right corner. If you're not into PayPal, drop us an email. We will get you a physical mailing address. But that is spectacular, and I'm so happy for folks that are listening. If you are not having any troubles on the job, I hope that continues and you have a long, prosperous work career, although I'm a tad dubious that that is the case. But folks, everyone content? Nothing else? Folks want to make sure they get in workplace racism? Yes, sir.
Well, just to speak on how to, I guess, minimize conflict, like I would do things like open doors for other black people, or just really put emphasis on that. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Be complimentary, things like that. And I think, well, from what I've analyzed and our behavior is black people and even other non-white people is they tend to, I guess, kind of catch on if they get a good sense of that being my reputation if I do it, over and over enough. So I think, well, they'll either end up not really saying anything other than, good morning or greetings or something like that. And they won't really get into no kind of non-constructive conversation like, oh, well, you're drinking your water today, or did you do any exercise? And it'll sum down to that, or something about, gardening or something, not really getting into any kind of gossip, even though that what Mr. Fuller mentions about the poison and stuff, that is there, that is within me. So I definitely try to stay being polite and courteous, and that tends to work for me. But my working environment is a largely white environment, so I guess it may be a little different, but that's what I tend to do when it comes to interacting with other black people. And I even noticed that other white people, they'll either, they'll try to, I guess, be nice, or they'll catch on to like, hey, he's being nice to these other black people, he's not supposed to be doing that, like basically what you touched on earlier. And it's something very powerful about that, because like I shared before, I've heard some, like the white guy, he would bring up that term prejudice, and he says, oh, you open that door for her, and him and this other white person was changing the snacks in the machine, and he was like, he brought up that word, oh, well, it seems like that could be a prejudice or something, or discriminative or something. And then I just I pretty much like started talking about snack food. I'm like, well, that's pretty much like saying, well, hey, I'd rather eat Cheetos than Cheetos or something. That was just him trying to pretty much get me upset. But I wanted to also point out about the female that was relocated. Like, she had her own office, like what you said, like how they'll have like a window and a nice personal space. Like, they put another black female in her old office. This black female used to be a supervisor a couple of years ago, and the black female that got fired, like they put this other black female like behind an empty desk, and the new supervisor, like she has her own personal office. They sat her in front of that office. So like my mom predicted that they did that so that she can train the white person, in that empty desk, like, very insidious. racism operating there. And, she's saying that she's looking for another job because they could be possibly conspiring to terminate her as well, because she kept saying that it's only 2 blacks in the department. So they found a way to get rid of this other black female, I guess by making sure she get upset enough, so they wait till the other people leave so she won't, I guess, confront anybody. So they had that well orchestrated, like, I'm thinking months ahead of time. So it's very interesting, because she also mentioned that she went and told and warned this other black female that they coincidentally, well, I won't say coincidentally, but in that same time, they gave her a promotion as I guess, an assistant supervisor, and she warned her by saying, hey, they possibly could be trying to set you up. This could be a possible smoke screen. And another non-white person, she's retiring this week. She told them that, hey, I don't want any, I don't want any kind of, parties or any kind of retirement, anything. I just want, my last day. I'm leaving here and y'all can have this job. I don't want nothing from y'all. And they still brought over a phony card and some flowers. So she saw right through them. And that was another non-white person that left the job in the same week. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Standard operating procedure: get the black person to train their white replacement who probably doesn't have the expertise or qualifications to take the job. But I think that's happened to quite a few folks quite a few folks who have participated in the program, unfortunately, have experienced that. But the moving around desk, office furniture situation, or where you work at, I've heard that, observed that consistently, unfortunately, and that can even involve moving you to a whole nother location, not just an office situation. Also, I wanted to toss in as well with the sexual component. If you're being harangued, harassed, if it's a white male, white female, whomever on the job, if there's some sort of sexual harassment that's going on, I think we were talking about that last week. One of the things that I did process, I think people were saying that if you bring this up, if you bring it up in a meeting, or if you go talk to a manager or supervisor or someone and you say, hey, this is happening, this is incorrect, I don't appreciate this, that they could retaliate. That could happen anyway. You don't have to do anything at all, even if it is a white person, male or female, and they're doing this and you are not receptive. If you make it seem as though you are not enjoying this, that this is something that you are not agreeable to, that alone could be grounds for them retaliating and saying, well, I'm going to go and, if I go and just lie and say that they were harassing me, or, just make up anything, that sort of thing happens on a regular basis anyway. So that was, I did think that was significant, that it doesn't necessarily have to be that you go and report a white person for wrongdoing, that is not grounds per se to motivate a white person to go and lie and make some sort of accusation against you, that they do that sort of racist recrimination anyway, even if you don't say anything, even if you just try and keep your mouth closed and ignore it, just on the basis if you're not acting like you're not, this is wonderful, this white person is flirting with me, or this white person is sexually harassing me on the job. Anything else folks wanted to make sure that they get in? I didn't hear anything about policy and procedure. I would again just encourage policy and procedure. Make sure that you go through it. Try to check things out if anything stands out, and ask questions. Also, I was going to ask about training. I think that might be something that works as well. That was something I wish I had brought up last week. The sexual harassment, it can apply to anything, but particularly with sexual harassment, when that gets brought up, like if you take the suggestion that was brought out last week in terms of bringing it up in a meeting, or if you just do it privately, if you go talk to your supervisor, manager, or human resources, or what have you, in terms of how do we deal with such and such, what's the policy and procedure for this particular company, how sexual harassment or any unwanted sexual commentary, sexual contact. How is that dealt with? What are the policies? What are the regulations for how that is supposed to be handled here? I would say it could also work to request training if you bring that up. To say that since, and as I stated last week, and as I've stated before, that you're not going in with an accusation against anyone. You just want to know what the rules and regulations are for how that's supposed to be dealt with. You can also add to that, perhaps we need additional training on this. It might be that people that work here are not informed about what is acceptable conduct on the job and or what is supposed to be done if this sort of thing happens. Could we have maybe, a refresher training on sexual harassment in the workplace? And particularly anybody, if you work in any sort of government job, if you're a state employee, if you're an official city job, anything like that, and even a lot of private companies, they have training. I know that's been my experience when I worked for a state official, and I've worked private sector as well, that they have training. That's a part of your training when you start the job. They will include sexual harassment, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Sometimes they'll have a whole course that'll last, an hour, 2 hours. Sometimes they'll take up the whole day just on, sexual harassment, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what you can do, what you can't do, what's supposed to happen, blah, 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 what's the procedure. If you need to report something, maybe we need to have a refresher just to make sure that everybody is clear about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable on the job. I would suggest that as well. I know Mr. Williams, he talks about training all the time, you individually, how you're trained on the job, because a lot of times that's how racism is practiced, where black people are not giving adequate training so that we can succeed and do our jobs well. This can be a training thing as well, that, hey, maybe we need to make sure everybody knows what the policy is, and that can also discourage people from engaging in that sort of behavior. Particularly, I would say, if you make that request for training on sexual harassment, if you make that publicly, and with the person who was doing the sexual harassing of you, maybe we need additional training just to make sure that everybody understands what is expected of them in this environment and what is acceptable, what is not acceptable workplace behavior. That might also discourage that person from, engaging in those sort of behaviors, if that makes sense. If I'm talking crazy, you can certainly let me know on that one as well.
I have a policy one.
Okay.
Okay. This one is in regards, it's not workplace, but it's my child's school. And they have a policy that we received an email saying that the kids are supposed to get out at 5 o'clock, at I guess 4:30, and if they have to serve the detention, they would get out at 5 o'clock. And detention can only be served for kids that miss school. So one day last week, my son got in trouble, and he was held for detention until 5:30, and then at 5:30, the dean of discipline, he called the house to explain, have this long conversation. I wasn't home, I was at work, but my wife was, and my wife was very angry because she felt like, listen, I have, my children out, and it's late, and the later, I would prefer for them to just let go at the time they're supposed to, and we all know, the new policy is going forward, this is how it's going to work. So I pulled off the email that we got from the lady that runs everything, which has the policy. And he had a meeting this week where he was stating the new policy. But he didn't hand out nothing in writing. The only thing in writing I have is what the lady who owns the school and has run things. So I was going to call and ask for a copy of the policy from the head office. They call the school that my kids go to and tell him I would like it in writing, his new policy. And then I was going to call the head office and say, hey, this might be an act of subversion. I think Rob said would be a good way to word it. This school is doing something different than the rest of the schools that you have in your network. So this charter school network is about 30, 40 schools. I mean, it's huge. And I just wanted to know if you thought that would be the best way to handle that.
May I be heard?
Oh, I was muted. I was muted. Yes, ma'am. We can hear you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to iterate. I don't have a policy thing, but I definitely, what you said about training, because, sometimes that could be, what it is. But, I guess my stickler is because like I said, I have a friend that works for, like, CC Stores, and he's like a district manager or something like that. He's kind of high up there. And I remember he always said, make sure you read and know your handbook. And I just can't express that enough, because sometimes we are running into behaviors, in the workplace. And it is good, like you say, because sometimes to be able to lay down, people do something and you can lay down and even go to HR. Because, a lot of times we know when we're on these jobs and you're trying to do things and these people are fighting against you and just doing what they want to do. And then when you lay down their policy, I'm not crazy. They can break their own policy, but still just to be able to say, okay, well, the handbook says this, or I don't see this in the handbook, and to be able to put that on them, to see that will stop them, at least it will make them hesitate. So I just can't reiterate enough to read and know your handbook, so that when they come up with stuff, that you have something, you can have their words to fight, use their words and their, their words, their objectives, whatever else, their policies, whatever else is in that book, that you can use that against them when, you are having problems in the workplace. And let me just stress this, and then I'll mute myself. And I would suggest that we do it as much as we can now, because we know Monday is Labor Day, and we know after Labor Day, this presidential election stuff is going to kick up into high gear, because they only have something like 60 days after that, because, it's coming time to vote. And, 2 months from now, we're going to have a new president. It could be President Trump. It could be President Clinton again. And, I'm not too pleased with either one of them. And we already see we already see the stories in the news, I think even just this week so far, and I'm not going to give it to this because I know this is a lot of compensatory call, but it fits in what I'm saying. Just this week so far, I think at least 5 black people have just basically been executed by white people. Yeah, the woman in Cleveland shot. I read somewhere in Nevada some man was shot to death because he wouldn't hold the door open for some lady. Some guy was mowed down with a Jeep by some white guy. And I think, what is it, Wade's cousin, and the singer Janelle Monáe, she has a cousin that was just killed, and I know those two may not be like black-white, but still just the environment we're in. So I would suggest that we get to, know this stuff, know the policy, know what the handbook says, because it's going to be rough on both, but I just feel that if Trump becomes the president, we'll really begin to see a lot of stuff begin to get acted out. So I can't reiterate enough about knowing your handbook and the policies and procedures that your company use. And I'll mute myself. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I was responding to Thomas in New York's question, and I was muted, but I certainly echo the importance of knowing policy and procedure. I encourage that regularly, and like I said, you don't have to read the whole thing at once. You can divide it up into sections, and in my view, it would be best to do it before things become a problem. But with Thomas in New York, if I heard the situation correctly, his child was reprimanded at school. They took some sort of punitive action. They made the child stay late after school. His wife, the child's mother, was not pleased about this, rightfully so. Thomas in New York investigated what is the policy and procedure about dealing with this situation. He was going to ask in writing. It seemed like what they did in this instant with his son seemed like it might have been a deviation from policy and procedure, and he was going to pursue it, and I think specifically using the language of this might be subversive activity if policy and procedure was violated, if you all did something that differs from what's in your manual about how these sort of things are supposed to happen. in the school. If that's what I heard correctly, in my view, that would be great. That would be a correct way of pursuing the situation because, again, just it's been my experience, that's one of the ways that racism, white supremacy is practiced most regularly in whites violent. I think a caller in Ohio just said that. That's one of the ways that they practice racism most regularly in violating their own policy with regards to how they treat black people, particularly in the workplace, but this is all areas of people activity where they're not even doing what they have stated themselves that they're supposed to do and how they handle these type of situations. So I would request the policy, look it over. If they can get you an electronic if they can get you an electronic copy, if they have a hard copy, whatever it is, what is the policy, and then evaluate it according to what they did, and then you can just sit down. You can even ask, what is your policy with dealing with these sort of infractions, whatever they accused your child of doing? And then, did you follow the policy? Yes or no? If they didn't, well, then to me, this sounds like subversive activity if you're not even abiding by your own policy, if I'm understanding things correctly, and have them explain it to you.
Sounds very good. Very logical.
Mine on. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt somebody?
Oh, I was just about to say something. I just remembered something. One of the owners of my company, there's three of them. He's actually one of the richest real estate moguls in New York City. He comes from a long line of family members. I think it's his grandfather, and now then his father and himself, and I think his brother. I think he might have one or two brothers that own quite a few buildings in Manhattan. And I recently read an article, this was maybe about 2 weeks ago, I meant to bring this up, where they discussed a rift in the family because their family are staunch Donald Trump supporters. From what I understand, his brother and his father have contributed quite a bit of money to Donald Trump's campaign. They're buddy on a very deep level. And the one who owns the company that I work for does not like Donald Trump. So there seems to be a family rift. And in the article, they discuss the fact that the owner of the company I work for is basically at odds with his relatives in regards to politics due to the fact that, of course, they're, Trump supporters. And obviously he's trying to look like he's not a Trump supporter. And I'm assuming due to the fact that he has a lot of non-white people on the job, and like I said, they refine their white supremacy on the job. They really don't talk about current events. It's very, very rare that they do, and if they do, it's usually in hushed tones and in small groups. So there's never been like a company-wide conversation, except, of course, to to help anti-sexual people deal with the shooting in Orlando. Outside of that, that's the only time I heard any sort of company-wide discussion about a current event in that regard. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because you made me think about that. So yeah, I work for someone who's literally like best buds, his family, with Donald Trump. So I just thought that was something I would share as well. Thank you.
That is for sure going to be something to codify for the rest of the year, pretty much, in terms of how you want to respond. Anything that's popping up, I've been mentioning this since the summertime, really, how you want to respond, because the political thing is sure going to be popping up on the job. Who are you voting for? What do you think when they get around to the debates and all that stuff later on? So just already have that in mind. And I think that's one of the big things about work. That's why I encourage reading the policy and procedures so that you're not surprised. So many times when you read about these incidents in the newspaper, or if you see it in the news where there's been an incident of racism, white supremacy on the job, one of the first things that you'll hear from the victim is, I can't believe this, I'm surprised, I'm stunned. And a big part of counter-racism is to really get out of that so that we are not surprised, we're not stunned, we're not caught off guard. I was expecting this sort of thing. I was prepared. Even better, I was prepared for this sort of thing to happen in terms of what I was going to say, what I was going to do, how I was going to react, respond in this sort of situation. So definitely go over the policy and procedure and just have that in mind in terms of anything that pops up with the election. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm not going to say. If you already know that there's certain things that you're not going to touch on or address, already have that in mind. And again, like I advised with some of the school situations, you can do some role play at home. If you are married, or if you have family members, or whatever the case is, you have a partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, you can just kind of practice some of this on your own. All right, you throw out some questions. What do you think about Trump? What do you think about Clinton? Who are you going to vote for? Blah, blah, blah. So you already have those responses, and they'll be comfortable. It won't be something where you're caught off guard or you're fishing. You will already know, I was expecting this to come up, and this is how I'm going to respond. And I think Thomas has been given a lot of illustrations. If you have whites on the job and they're making it clear, I'm down with Donald Trump, that's my dude, put that wall up, keep these Muslims out, blah, blah, blah. Fascinating how you're going to respond to that. If you say anything at all, if you want to take the question route, or if you just want to give the codified non-response, if you want to use that as well. Have all that stuff planned out, and you can already give some rehearsal runs, so it'll be comfortable, natural, and you'll just be keep things rolling on the job as easy as you can. Anything else folks want to make sure they get in before we wrap up? Folks satisfied?
I think that the whites talk to me about Trump because, I don't give any pushback. I'm a staunch Trump supporter. I can't wait. So, I'm just like, yeah, I'm with it. Whatever he says, hey, yeah, didn't he say that? Wow, interesting. It sounds like a pretty good idea. I just can't, I think it's going to, what the lady caller just said, if he gets in, they're all going to feel like they're entitled to talk just like him, and that's when that policy could come into play big time.
Absolutely. Be looking at that in advance, the policy and procedure. And again, like I said, feel free to share. That's something I encourage as well. If you go through and you read it, anything stands out with the wording, if it's ambiguously worded, if it's not something that you don't readily understand, because that's something that you can ask questions about, to have someone explain it to you so that it's clear and makes sense to you. If you see that it's not being enforced, that's definitely one that you want to highlight in advance. If you see where this particular regulation is being flouted regularly, where people are violating this and nobody says anything, nobody's being written up about this, nobody's raising this as an issue, that, hey, this is, our policy and procedure and people are regularly not following this. Let's, get that straight so that people are going by what our guidelines are. Make note of that sort of thing. That can be of help to you in the workplace. Anything else folks want to get in, or folks satisfied for the session? I will assume folks are satisfied. I will again say, even if you're not able to dial in, you can feel free to drop us an email, and we will read the response during the broadcast. Again, this is not a spectator broadcast. This is not one of the programs where you should be, yes, I'm waiting for Thursday so that I can hear what they talk about. That'll be fun. That'll be grand. This is really one of those where we want to be sharing. And again, even if it is you reflecting on your work experience, things that have happened to you previously, maybe when you were a bit more confused about racism before you heard about any of this content or counter-racist concepts, where you can think back and recall a situation. Wow, this situation happened. This is what I did at that time. Knowing what I do now, I would respond in a completely different way. This is what I would do now based on my understanding of racism. I think that really, really important, and that's something that even I try to do myself in reflecting on things that have happened in my work experience, things that I would have done differently or said differently, knowing what I know now about racism, white supremacy. I think even as I shared a few weeks ago, just not participating in goofiness, things that are not related to what your job is. That right there can do a lot to cut down on unnecessary problems, conflict in the workplace, just avoiding things that don't have anything to do with your job. That's not why I'm here. Let's just stick to what I am getting paid to do, what I signed up to do with my workplace duties. With that, we should be here tomorrow. This will be our second to last installment, Blood Brothers. Johnny Smith, Randy Roberts. Blood Brothers, The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. We are almost at the end of the book. Looking forward to getting our concluding thoughts, synopsis of what we have got from these racist suspects who are writing about these really legendary figures with regards to black people who try to do something about racism, white supremacy. In that vein, since we'll finish the book, not tomorrow, but next Friday, I think the next book we're going to do is The Spook Who Sat by the Door, just because that's, speaking of legendary. Sam Greenlee, just really, really important novel. He passed away in 2014. I do think we have some listeners who have not read that book. At least I've talked to folks who said that they haven't read the book. I know a lot more people have seen the film that the book is based on. So I think that'll be our next book. I'm not aware of there being an audiobook of The Spook Who Sat by the Door. So if anybody wants to read it, I think that's one that I would like one narrator to do the whole thing, just so that we can have a consistent flow and get accustomed to having one voice doing the whole thing. If we have anybody that would like to read that, great. Drop us an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. If not, I haven't read anything this year, so I would be down to read that. If we don't have any volunteers to read Spook Who Sat by the Door, it's not too long. It's about 250 pages approximately, give or take 10. So it's not too long. The only challenging thing is that it does have a lot of dialogue between characters, so you might have to do a little bit of voice inflections to reflect the different speakers in the book, but it is a pretty fun book, and we haven't done any fiction. I do try to make sure we get it at least one bit of fiction in every now and then, and summer is almost over. I try to get at least one bit of fiction in during the summertime, so right at the end of summer we'll get in our bit of fiction, and then we'll pick up something more serious, nonfiction, once we're done with this. But let us know if anybody wants to narrate Spook Who Sat by the Door. This is obviously a male author, Mr. Greenlee, but if we had a black female that wanted to read, I would be down. That would not bother me about the book. I don't see why that would be a problem. I do try to keep it matched. If it's a female author, have a female narrator and that sort of thing, but that's not always the case. I don't think that would be a big to-do for this work. Anywho, if you have problems, if you can't find something in the archives, guest suggestion, gripes, complaints, drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com, untiljustice@gmail.com. Thank you kindly for the folks who participated. Hopefully we will have fewer spectators, more participants. We get ready to do it again next Thursday for workplace racism. I will again encourage, and this certainly is for the job, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. I have seen no evidence where us being intoxicated under any narcotics, alcohol, whatever it is, I've seen no evidence where that has helped us to solve this problem. None at all. If anything, I've seen too many illustrations where this has just made things way worse. Certainly, if you're going to be in a vehicle, driver, passenger, even as a pedestrian, you do not want to be inebriated and have that be the day that you bump into Daniel Holtzclaw, Darren Wilson, race soldier, badge or no. That can be a life-altering, life-ending situation quickly, and I mean like within seconds. You being under the influence of anything is not going to make that situation go any better at all. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest level of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Mm-hmm. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.